Most people believe that success is about talent, intelligence, or luck. They assume that those who achieve extraordinary outcomes are somehow fundamentally different. But when you examine the biology and behavior underlying performance, a different pattern emerges. The majority of people don't fail because they lack ability. They fail because they consistently engage in behaviors that move them away from the very outcomes they claim to want. The brain is not designed for long-term success by default. It is designed for survival, efficiency, and immediate reward. That means it is constantly scanning for ways to conserve energy and avoid discomfort. When you decide you want to achieve something difficult, you are essentially asking your nervous system to go against its primary programming. And most people never learn how to override that programming. One of the key reasons people never succeed is that they rely on motivation as their primary driver. Motivation is a transient neurochemical state. It fluctuates based on sleep, stress, nutrition, environment, and even time of day. If your progress depends on feeling motivated, your progress will be inconsistent. High performers understand that consistency comes from systems, not feelings. They create routines that operate independently of how they feel in the moment. Another critical factor is the inability to tolerate discomfort. The pursuit of any meaningful goal requires sustained periods of effort without immediate reward. This creates a mismatch between expectation and reality. The brain releases dopamine not just when you achieve something, but when you anticipate progress toward it. However, if progress feels slow or unclear, dopamine levels drop, and the task begins to feel aversive. Most people interpret that feeling as a sign that something is wrong. In reality, it's a signal that they are in the exact phase where growth occurs. People also tend to overestimate what they can achieve in the short term and underestimate what they can achieve in the long term. This leads to a cycle of intense effort followed by burnout and disengagement. Instead of building momentum, they repeatedly reset to zero. The nervous system adapts to patterns, not bursts. Consistency, even at low intensity, is what drives long-term change. Another reason most people never succeed is that they don't control their environment. Behavior is highly context-dependent. If your environment is filled with distractions, your brain will continuously shift attention toward those stimuli. Every time you switch tasks, there is a cognitive cost. Over time, this reduces your ability to engage in deep, focused work. People often believe they lack discipline when in fact they have simply designed an environment that makes discipline nearly impossible. There is also a fundamental misunderstanding of failure. Most people view failure as a negative outcome to be avoided. But from a neurobiological perspective, failure is essential feedback. It provides information about what doesn't work, which is necessary for refining strategy. When people avoid failure, they also avoid learning. As a result, they remain stuck in the same patterns, repeating the same mistakes. Sleep and recovery are often overlooked, yet they play a crucial role in success. Cognitive performance, emotional regulation, and decision-making are all directly influenced by sleep quality. When people are sleep-deprived, their ability to focus decreases, their impulse control weakens, and their stress response increases. This makes it significantly harder to engage in the behaviors required for success. Despite this, many people sacrifice sleep in the pursuit of productivity, not realizing that they are undermining their own performance. Another major factor is the lack of clarity. The brain requires specific targets to allocate resources effectively. Vague goals lead to vague actions. When people say they want to be successful without defining what that means in concrete terms, they create ambiguity. The brain does not know where to direct attention or effort. Clear, measurable goals provide a framework for action and make progress trackable. Social influence also plays a significant role. Humans are highly sensitive to the behavior and expectations of those around them. If you are surrounded by people who do not prioritize growth, your own standards will likely adjust downward. Conversely, being in an environment where effort and improvement are the norm can elevate your behavior. Most people never consciously choose their social environment, yet it has a profound impact on their outcomes. There is also the issue of identity. Behavior is strongly influenced by how you see yourself. If you identify as someone who lacks discipline or struggles with consistency, your actions will align with that identity. Changing behavior requires changing identity at a fundamental level. This involves repeatedly engaging in actions that reinforce a new self-concept even when it feels unfamiliar. Time management is another area where people fall short. It's not just about managing time, but managing energy and attention. The brain has limited capacity for focused work each day. High performers structure their day to align demanding tasks with periods of peak alertness. Most people, however, approach their day reactively, allowing external demands to dictate their schedule. This leads to fragmented attention and reduced productivity. Fear of judgment is another barrier. The brain is wired to seek social approval and avoid rejection. This can lead to hesitation, overthinking, and avoidance of risk. People often delay action because they are concerned about how others will perceive them. This prevents them from gaining the experience and feedback necessary for growth. Another overlooked factor is the lack of patience. In a world that emphasizes instant gratification, the idea of working towards something for months or years can feel unnatural. The brain becomes conditioned to expect immediate results. When those results don't appear, people lose interest and shift to something else. This constant switching prevents them from reaching the level of mastery required for success. Most people also fail to track their progress. Without feedback, it's difficult to know whether your efforts are effective. Tracking provides data that can inform adjustments and maintain motivation. It creates a sense of forward movement even when progress is slow. There is also a tendency to focus on outcomes rather than processes. Outcomes are influenced by many factors, some of which are hard your control. Processes, on the other hand, are within your control. By focusing on daily actions and habits, you create a foundation for consistent progress. Over time, these processes lead to the desired outcomes. Another reason people never succeed is that they don't spend enough time in deep work. Shallow tasks such as checking messages or browsing content provide quick dopamine rewards but do not contribute significantly to long-term goals. Deep work requires sustained attention and cognitive effort. It is uncomfortable, but it is also where meaningful progress occurs. People also underestimate the importance of starting. The initial phase of any task often feels the most difficult. This is due to the way the brain evaluates effort and reward. Once you begin, the perceived difficulty often decreases. However, if you never start, you never reach that point. High performers reduce the barrier to entry by making tasks as simple as possible to initiate. Another key factor is resilience. Setbacks are inevitable. The difference between those who succeed and those who don't is not the absence of setbacks, but the response to them. Resilient individuals view setbacks as temporary and controllable. They adjust their strategy and continue moving forward. There is also a lack of long-term vision. Without a clear sense of direction, it's easy to become distracted by short-term opportunities that do not align with your goals. A strong vision provides a reference point for decision-making and helps maintain focus over time. Finally, most people never succeed because they do not take full responsibility for their outcomes. It is easier to attribute failure to external factors than to examine one's own behavior. However, without accountability, there's no basis for change. Taking responsibility does not mean ignoring external challenges, but it does mean recognizing your ability to influence your response to those challenges. Success is not a single event, but a series of behaviors repeated over time. It is the result of aligning your actions with your goals, even when it is uncomfortable, inconvenient, or uncertain. The brain can be trained to support these behaviors, but it requires deliberate effort and consistency. Most people never engage in that process long enough to see the results they are capable of achieving. If you want, I can make this more intense, more emotional, or more YouTube-ready with punchier lines and rhythm. And what is often misunderstood is that this process is not about intensity, but about duration. The nervous system does not change because of one moment of effort. It changes through repeated exposure to specific patterns of thought and action. Neuroplasticity, the brain's ability to rewire itself, is driven by repetition and focus. When you engage in a behavior consistently, you strengthen the neural circuits associated with that behavior. When you avoid a behavior, those circuits weaken. Most people unknowingly reinforce the very habits that keep them stagnant. There is also the issue of attention fragmentation. Modern environments are engineered to capture and hold your attention in short bursts. Every notification, every piece of content, every interruption trains your brain to expect novelty. Over time, this reduces your capacity for sustained focus. The ability to concentrate deeply on a single task becomes diminished, and with it, your ability to produce meaningful work. Success in many domains requires extended periods of uninterrupted focus. Without that, progress becomes shallow and inconsistent. Another layer to this is the mismanagement of stress. Stress is not inherently negative. In fact, acute stress can enhance performance by increasing alertness and mobilizing energy. However, chronic stress has the opposite effect. It impairs cognitive function, disrupts sleep, and reduces motivation. Most people do not differentiate between these types of stress. They operate in a constant state of low-level stress, which gradually erodes their ability to perform. Learning to regulate stress through practices such as controlled breathing, movement, and structured recovery is essential for maintaining high levels of performance over time. Nutrition also plays a role that is often underestimated. The brain is an energy-intensive organ. It requires a steady supply of nutrients to function optimally. Fluctuations in blood glucose levels can lead to changes in mood, focus, and energy. Diets that are high in processed foods and low in essential nutrients can impair cognitive performance. While nutrition alone will not determine success, it creates the foundation upon which other behaviors are built. There is also a tendency to seek complexity where simplicity would be more effective. People often look for advanced strategies, tools, or hacks, believing that these will provide an edge. In reality, the fundamentals are what matter most. Consistent sleep, regular exercise, focused work, and deliberate practice are the core drivers of progress. Advanced techniques may enhance these behaviors, but they cannot replace them. Most people never master the basics, yet they continuously search for something more sophisticated. Another critical factor is the way people interpret effort. Effort is often perceived as a sign of inadequacy, as if needing to work hard means you are not naturally capable. This belief can lead to avoidance of challenging tasks. However, effort is a necessary component of learning and growth. When you engage in effortful activity, you are signaling to your brain that this task is important. This increases the likelihood that the associated neural circuits will be strengthened. There is also a disconnect between intention and action. People often have clear intentions but fail to translate them into behavior. This gap is where most goals are lost. Bridging this gap requires specific planning. When you decide in advance when, where, and how you will perform a task, you reduce the cognitive load associated with decision-making. This increases the likelihood that the behavior will occur. Without this level of specificity, intentions remain abstract and are easily overridden by competing demands. Another reason people struggle is that they do not build tolerance for boredom. Repetition is inherently monotonous. The process of improvement often involves performing the same actions over and over again. This lack of novelty can lead to disengagement. However, boredom is not an obstacle to success. It is part of the process. Learning to remain engaged in the absence of stimulation is a skill that can be developed. Those who succeed are often those who can persist through periods of low excitement. There is also the issue of comparison. Constantly measuring your progress against others can be demotivating, especially when you focus on those who are ahead of you. This can create a sense of inadequacy and reduce motivation. While comparison can provide useful benchmarks, it should not be the primary measure of success. Progress should be evaluated based on your own starting point and trajectory. Another overlooked aspect is the importance of reflection. Without taking time to analyze your actions and outcomes, it is difficult to identify what is working and what is not. Reflection allows you to make informed adjustments. It turns experience into learning. Most people move from one task to another without pausing to evaluate their performance. As a result, they miss opportunities for improvement. There is also a tendency to underestimate the power of small improvements. Incremental gains may seem insignificant in the moment, but they compound over time. A 1% improvement each day can lead to substantial progress over the course of a year. However, because these changes are gradual, they often go unnoticed. This can lead to frustration and a desire for more immediate results. Another key factor is the ability to delay gratification. Many of the behaviors that lead to success do not provide immediate rewards. In contrast, many distractions offer instant gratification. The ability to choose long-term benefits over short-term pleasure is a defining characteristic of high performers. This requires not only discipline, but also an understanding of how to structure your environment to minimize temptation. People also often fail to recognize the importance of momentum. Starting is difficult, but maintaining progress becomes easier once momentum is established. Each completed task creates a sense of accomplishment, which can increase motivation for the next task. Interrupting this momentum can make it more difficult to resume. This is why consistency is so important. Even small actions, when performed regularly, can sustain momentum. Another issue is the lack of commitment. Many people approach their goals with a conditional mindset. They are willing to put in effort as long as it is convenient or as long as they see immediate results. This conditional approach limits progress. Commitment involves continuing to act in alignment with your goals, regardless of circumstances. It requires a willingness to endure discomfort and uncertainty. There is also a misunderstanding of what success feels like. People often expect success to be accompanied by constant positive emotion. In reality, the process of achieving something meaningful is often challenging and uncomfortable. There are periods of doubt, frustration, and fatigue. Interpreting these feelings as a sign that you are on the wrong path can lead to premature abandonment of your goals. Another important factor is the ability to prioritize. Not all tasks are equally important. Focusing on high-impact activities is essential for efficient progress. However, these tasks are often the most difficult and require the most effort. It is easy to fill your time with low-impact activities that create the illusion of productivity. Recognizing and prioritizing what truly matters is a skill that must be developed. There is also the role of self-talk. The way you speak to yourself influences your behavior. Negative self-talk can reduce motivation and increase stress. Positive, realistic self-talk can enhance performance and resilience. This does not mean ignoring challenges, but rather approaching them with a constructive mindset. Another reason most people never succeed is that they do not fully engage with the present moment. They are either dwelling on past failures or worrying about future outcomes. This divided attention reduces the quality of their work. Focusing on the task at hand allows for greater efficiency and effectiveness. Finally, there is the issue of persistence. Success often requires sustained effort over long periods of time without clear indicators of progress. This can be discouraging. However, those who continue to act in alignment with their goals, despite uncertainty, are the ones who eventually achieve meaningful outcomes. The ability to persist, to continue taking action even when results are not immediately visible, is one of the most critical factors in success. If you'd like, I can now merge both parts into one seamless 2,200-word script, or adapt it into a high-retention YouTube narration format with pacing cues and emphasis.